It begins with a whisper, a confession from a man who's lived through the kind of ordeal most sailors only speak of in hushed tones. Being taken hostage was sort of a taboo subject among sailors. Anything, even shipwreck, is better. Those words belong to Captain Richard Phillips, a man who understood that the ocean can be as merciless as it is magnificent. But this is not just the story of one captain. It's a story of what happens when the predators of the sea choose the wrong prey, when the hunter becomes the hunted. Because in this story, the Somali pirates didn't stalk their victims. They stumbled into the crosshairs of the United States Navy. It was April 8th, 2009. The Maersk Alabama, a towering steel giant stretching over 500 feet, cut across the waters of the Somali basin, its bow breaking through the waves on its way to Mombasa, Kenya. Aboard the vessel were 400 containers packed with food aid from USAID, 8,000 metric tons of life-saving supplies for starving families across East Africa. To most, it was a humanitarian mission. But in the lawless waters off the Horn of Africa, it was a floating prize, an irresistible target for men with AK-47s and nothing to lose. At the helm stood Captain Phillips, a seasoned mariner with 3 decades of experience navigating some of the world's most dangerous waters. From the moment he boarded in Salalah, Oman, he sensed trouble, doors left unlocked, security drills forgotten, anti-piracy cages unlatched. Complacency in these waters was as deadly as any bullet. He warned his crew, stay sharp, stay ready. They'd trained for this moment, anti-piracy protocols, emergency lockdowns, and small arms practice. But training and reality rarely collide on equal terms. At dawn, the sea was deceptively calm, but the radar told another story. A call came from the bridge, boat approaching, 3 miles out, astern. The alarm blared. Men scrambled to stations. Out on the horizon, 2 small boats, skiffs, appeared, racing toward them. 4 figures in one, armed and fast, cutting through the water like sharks scenting blood. Captain Phillips fired flares into the air, a final warning that this ship was no easy mark. But the pirates didn't flinch. Waves crashed, hoses blasted seawater in powerful arcs, but the skiff kept coming. Within minutes, 5 at most, they were alongside. Hooks caught the railing, boots hit the deck. As the pirates spread across the ship, Phillips guided them carefully, leading them away from his hidden crew. His men were concealed in the engine room, silent and waiting, while their captain played a dangerous game of negotiation and deception. By afternoon, the balance shifted. Below deck, the crew managed to overpower one of the attackers, their leader, Abduwali Muse. They had turned the tables. Now, Phillips had leverage. He tried to reason with the remaining pirates to trade their leader for peace, but desperation is unpredictable. As the sun dipped low over the Somali horizon, the pirates demanded a ransom, $30,000 from the ship's safe. Phillips handed it over, hoping it would end there. Instead, it was the beginning of the most harrowing chapter of his life. During what was supposed to be a peaceful exchange, the pirates made their move. When Phillips stepped onto their lifeboat, they cut the line and sped off, dragging him into the open sea as their hostage. The Maersk Alabama's crew had fought back, but now their captain was gone, and their only hope rested with a distant force already on its way, the United States Navy. Because once the call went out, the Navy answered. The ocean had gone silent. The Maersk Alabama was safe, but Captain Phillips was gone, held at gunpoint inside a tiny orange lifeboat drifting in the Indian Ocean. 4 pirates, 1 hostage, and an endless stretch of blue. The world was watching. Word traveled fast. By the time the sun rose again, the U.S. Navy had already begun to move. Within hours, destroyers were cutting through the waves toward the lifeboat's last known position. The USS Bainbridge, a 500-foot Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, was the first to arrive. On board was Commander Frank Castellano. His mission was simple but impossible: bring Captain Phillips home alive. The lifeboat was barely 18 feet long, bobbing like a cork in the open ocean, with a single covered hatch. Inside, temperatures soared above 100 degrees Celsius. The pirates were exhausted, dehydrated, and growing increasingly desperate. The USS Bainbridge kept its distance at first, shadowing them from a few hundred yards away. Above, P-3 Orion surveillance aircraft circled in wide arcs, relaying every move back to command centers thousands of miles away. The Pentagon had declared the situation a top national priority. Negotiations began almost immediately. Through a loudspeaker, interpreters tried to reason with the pirates, offering food, water, and medical aid if they released the captain. But every offer was met with suspicion. The leader, Muse, was now a prisoner aboard the Bainbridge. The remaining pirates believed he'd been killed. Rage replaced reason. For Phillips, every minute was survival. The pirates argued among themselves about ransom, about escape, about whether to kill their hostage and vanish before more American warships arrived. He tried to stay calm, reminding them that help was coming if they just surrendered. He even pretended to be their advocate in front of Navy negotiators, hoping to lower the tension inside the cramped boat. By day 3, the standoff had turned into a chess match. The pirates tied Phillips to a seat, rifles trained on him, as the Bainbridge drifted closer. U.S. Navy SEALs had been deployed from Djibouti, Team 6, the most elite special operations unit in the world. They parachuted into the sea under the cover of darkness and were now aboard the Bainbridge, quietly preparing for a scenario no one wanted to admit: a rescue by force. In Washington, President Barack Obama had authorized lethal action if Phillips's life was in immediate danger. The clock was ticking. Every hour, the pirates' nerves frayed further. Their fuel was running low, and the current was carrying them toward the Somali coast, toward pirate-controlled territory. If they made it there, Phillips would disappear forever. The Navy had to act, but one wrong move could mean the captain's death. To buy time, Commander Castellano tried a new approach. He invited the pirates to board the Bainbridge, promising medical aid, shade, and safety if they left the lifeboat. They agreed to tow the vessel behind the destroyer, a risky maneuver that brought the two ships within just 100 feet of each other. From that moment on, U.S. Navy snipers had clear visual contact through high-powered scopes. The lifeboat rocked violently in the wake. Inside, Phillips could hear every sound: the creak of ropes, the hum of the destroyer's engines, the muffled voices of men planning both rescue and death. Night fell again. For 4 days, the standoff had held. Then, at 7:19 p.m., Aviaz, everything changed. A pirate raised his rifle toward Phillips. Navy snipers aboard the Bainbridge saw it through infrared scopes. 3 triggers pulled almost simultaneously, 3 rounds fired, 3 pirates dead. It was over in less than 5 seconds. Silence followed, the kind of silence that only comes after chaos. Navy SEALs stormed the lifeboat, cut Phillips free, and pulled him aboard the destroyer. His first words were simple, almost disbelieving. "Are you guys all Navy?" Back in Washington, the news broke within minutes. The world watched as images of Captain Phillips stepping onto the Bainbridge's deck flooded every screen, exhausted, sunburned, but alive. For the U.S. Navy, it was a flawless operation. For the pirates of Somalia, it was a message written in precision and steel: no American will be left behind. The rescue of Captain Richard Phillips was more than just a mission. It was a signal to the world. In those 5 seconds, the U.S. Navy had redefined the modern rules of engagement against piracy. It was a textbook example of precision, patience, and controlled force. The morning after, images of the Bainbridge filled every major news network. Anchors called it a flawless operation. Military analysts called it a message. And the American public called it what it was: a miracle at sea. Captain Phillips' safe return became a symbol of the Navy's promise. No matter how far, no matter how dangerous, America protects its own. For the families of sailors deployed across oceans, that message carried deep comfort. For adversaries, it carried something else: warning. In Washington, senior military officials and the president himself publicly praised the operation. It had required the synchronization of intelligence assets, naval command, and elite special forces operating across thousands of miles, all in international waters under intense global scrutiny. Every decision had been calculated, every shot authorized under the tightest rules of engagement. President Obama spoke simply, but firmly: "We will always protect our citizens, and we will stand firm against those who threaten us." It wasn't just a statement, it was strategy. Behind the scenes, analysts began reviewing every detail. Satellite imagery, communication intercepts, and after-action reports were dissected to improve future naval operations. The U.S. Navy's Africa Command, working with NATO and regional allies, quickly expanded maritime patrol coverage in the Horn of Africa. The operation's success directly influenced the creation of Combined Task Force 151, a multinational coalition specifically designed to counter piracy. Within months, piracy incidents dropped sharply. The same waters that once echoed with gunfire and ransom calls were now guarded by destroyers, frigates, and maritime patrol aircraft from over 30 nations. The message was clear: the era of unchecked piracy was ending. But for those who lived it, the impact was personal. The crew of the Maersk Alabama eventually returned to duty, their story immortalized in headlines and documentaries. Captain Phillips himself became a reluctant hero, praised not for bravado, but for calm endurance in the face of death. He would later say, "The Navy didn't just save my life, they reminded the world what America stands for." Meanwhile, inside the Navy, the success of the Bainbridge operation became a case study in leadership and precision warfare. At naval academies and command training centers, instructors used it to teach risk assessment, negotiation under pressure, and the integration of special operations with surface warfare assets. Even years later, veterans of the mission still recall the intensity of those 4 days, the oppressive heat, the sleepless nights, and the unspoken weight of every order. For them, it wasn't about headlines. It was about the quiet professionalism that defines the U.S. Navy. On the decks of Destro, oilers and carriers around the world, sailors still look to that moment as proof that preparation and discipline can overcome chaos. The story of the Maersk Alabama wasn't just a rescue. It was a reaffirmation of American resolve on the high seas, a reminder that the world's oceans, vast and lawless as they seem, are still watched by the guardians of freedom. The Maersk Alabama rescue did more than save one man. It reshaped how the U.S. Navy views modern threats on the world's oceans. From the Gulf of Aden to the Strait of Malacca, piracy was no longer seen as a scattered criminal nuisance. It was now understood as a global challenge demanding coordination, technology, and unrelenting readiness. The lessons from that operation rippled across every fleet. Commanders began rethinking engagement protocols, emphasizing precision and human judgment over brute force. The success of the SEAL operation showed that modern naval warfare isn't just about firepower, it's about intelligence, communication, and the split-second trust between sailors and command. In the years that followed, the Navy refined its rapid response doctrine. New procedures were written to deploy elite teams faster, with integrated surveillance and drone support. Ship crews were trained to respond to hijackings with calm discipline, buying time for intelligence assets and special forces to align. The combination of traditional seamanship with cutting-edge technology became the new standard of deterrence. Surveillance satellites, autonomous underwater drones, and AI-assisted radar networks began to form a digital shield around commercial lanes. The goal was simple: no vessel sails alone. From Norfolk to Bahrain, from San Diego to the Pacific's vast expanse, the Navy's eyes are always open. But the legacy of the Maersk Alabama runs deeper than tactics or hardware. It's a story about the men and women who stand watch over waters most people will never see. It's about quiet professionalism, about those who act without expectation of glory, only duty. Every destroyer, every carrier group, every patrol aircraft carries that ethos forward. The sailors who were on the Bainbridge that week still remember the silence before the command was given, the weight of that decision, the responsibility it carried. And yet, when the moment came, they acted with clarity and precision. That's what separates the U.S. Navy from every other force on the planet. It's not just the steel or the technology, it's the discipline, the training, and the shared belief that freedom on land begins with security at sea. As the years passed, the image of Captain Phillips walking free on the deck of the Bainbridge became more than history. It became a symbol, a reminder that, in the most remote corners of the world, American resolve does not waver. Today, the same waters are safer, the same sea lanes steadier, because of what was learned there. The Maersk Alabama incident may have started as a small lifeboat adrift in a vast ocean, but its outcome reshaped global maritime security forever. And somewhere out there, across the endless blue, a Navy destroyer cuts through the waves, silent, vigilant, and ready. Because freedom still sails under the stars and stripes.